Hello, this is Judy Schwank.
Hi, Senator Schwank. This is Eric Harlock at Lancaster Farming. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay, thanks. And thank you for joining us today on the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast.
Oh, of course.
So I wanted to talk about Senate Bill 335, the Industrial Hemp Act.
Yes.
First, can you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, what it is a bill that will allow hemp processors to process CBD in the Commonwealth within certain parameters, most certainly making sure that the product that it's extracted from, doesn't have higher than 0.3% of the THC.
Mm-hmm.
And it classifies the CBD as simply a food product. So it does not have to be it doesn't have to be regulated like it's a drug, because no claims that it cures anything will be made on the product. It's very similar to legislation that was passed in Colorado.
Okay. How will this bill affect farmers?
Well, for those farmers who are interested in hemp and think that they want to work on the CBD end of it, farmers that I've talked to all have different goals in terms of hemp. Some of them are looking more of it as a bedding or as a physical additive to construction material, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But for those farmers who are interested in looking at CBD, which is one of the probably more profitable aspects of hemp, at least right now, this gives them some guidelines to work under until the Federal Drug Administration makes some decisions on this.
Okay. So this doesn't cover anything with hemp as far as a livestock feed goes?
No. And recall, please, that CBD is extracted from the leaves. It is not from the seed itself.
Right. Do you see any opposition to the bill?
No, I think what will, as always, is the issue with this is that it's a task to explain it. I think that's probably the heaviest lift we have here, is to help legislators and consumers and farmers understand what the point of the legislation is.
And when do you foresee this going to vote?
Well, first of all, it needs to come out of committee. So I will hopefully have some discussions with my co-chair of the Senate Ag and Rural Affairs Committee, Elder Vogel, and ask Elder if he would be willing to bring the bill up.
Okay. Is there anything else our listeners should know about the bill?
The other thing of this is that it gives, I think, consumers, the opportunity to be sure that they are buying a Pennsylvania product, that it is a Pennsylvania product where the quality and the quantity of CBD in whatever product they buy is reliable information. There's a lot of CBD products on the market right now. I see them all the time. Mm-hmm. But I've seen testing as well that has shown that many of them do not contain the amount of CBD that they claim to.
Right.
So this, I think, will give consumers a benefit as well.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today, Senator.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Pennsylvania State Senator Judy Schwank. She mentioned her colleague in the Senate, Elder Vogel, who, at last week's Senate Appropriations Committee budget hearings, was addressing the Secretary of Agriculture, Russell Redding.
Secretary, first off, could you give us an update on the industrial hemp program and where it is? Obviously, since the federal government released it from all the constraints in the Farm Bill last year, what I read and what I understand, it's going to take off like wildfire here in Pennsylvania. There's an article in the Lancaster Farming this week about a gentleman in York County who's going to put in a processing facility and everything. Could you give us an update on the acres available to people interested in planting this year as well?
Yeah, Senator, thank you. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to the conversation today. Very much appreciate that. They had this great headline in last week's Lancaster Farming that said, "Hemp, hemp, hooray," right? And I thought it was a great sort of reminder of the enthusiasm around it, right? The key, by the way, is the investment that's being made in the industrial hemp, and that story was around a York County business that's going to be processing hemp, which is really critical.
So, of course, he's referring to the recent announcement that Groff North America is installing the very first hemp train. It's a whole hemp plant processing machine going into Red Lion, Pennsylvania, over there in York County. And the headline he mentioned, Hemp Hemperay, is from a story written by my colleague Phil Gruber. He's the news editor at Lancaster Farming. And the work that Phil does is one of the things that sets our paper apart from other farming newspapers. Let's call Phil now and see what he's working on for this week's paper.
Lancaster Farming, this is Phil Gruber.
Hey, Phil, it's Eric, and you're on the podcast. I'm curious what stories you're working on for this week.
One of the things I'm working on is a story about the Pennsylvania Milk Marketing Board. They're looking to give a slight increase to a premium that's paid on milk that is produced and processed and sold here in the state. The idea is that it would help the state's dairy farmers, who obviously have been struggling a lot over the past few years, and their problems have only grown worse in the past year, in part because of tariffs and bad weather that cause problems for crop production.
Okay, sounds like good news for dairy farmers.
Yeah, it won't be maybe not a huge amount of money, but it could help a little bit.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Another thing that's going on, we got the what USDA is calling the middle list. Basically, they cut down the number of sites that are in contention to host two of USDA's research agencies. The Economic Research Service and the National Institute for Food and Agriculture have been, Sonny Perdue is looking to move them out of the National Capital Region. So USDA says it's going to save money and help worker retention. But a lot of groups in ag and in science have been saying that the justification doesn't really seem to be there. Now, there are some places that are still in contention here in the Northeast. You've got Cornell University, Virginia State, but some other places did not make the cut, which would include a couple counties in Maryland and some cities in Virginia.
Okay, sounds like we got another good paper brewing this week.
Yeah, people should definitely pick it up.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll let you get back to work. Thanks.
All right, we'll see you.
So that same week that Phil's Hemp Hemperay story ran, we had another story written by our next guest, Jeff Graybill. He's a Penn State Extension educator on the field and forage crops team. He's a longtime Lancaster County resident and farmer, and he's got some concerns about people rushing in to industrial hemp. So I thought we'd bring him on the show and hear what those concerns are. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric.
A couple of weeks ago, you wrote an article for Lancaster Farming that was called Do Your Homework Before Venturing into the Wild West of Hemp. I often ask people, how do farmers avoid getting the short end of the stick? And I think, you have some of these same concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as with any new venture or, maybe a new commodity, there's some risks involved. And right now there just seems to be, almost euphoria over the potential for this crop. And while I think there is a bright future for it, I did a field day last year, and of the 150 people that came, I would say over 90% were interested solely in the CBD production. And that seems to be where all the excitement is. And there's so many other uses that it just concerns me that people really need to do their homework. They need to know, who they're growing it for, and if that person is financially stable, and if they have the wherewithal to market that product.
So what do you recommend farmers do to find out that information about their market?
Well, we've had a number of groups around the county forming that are interested in growing hemp for the CBD. And so some of them are locally based. And so I think, if it's someone that you know of or have worked with in the past, that may help. If it's someone who's an investor from out of the area, a number of them have been holding meetings for farmers where they'll bring in, 15 or 20 guys that are interested in growing. And then I was at one of these Friday night where they sit down and kind of present their resume in a way. And I felt much more at home after I listened to this particular one investor and the plans he had for growing it and how he was planning to market it and things of that nature. So, as much as you're able, to find that kind of information out, the financial strength of the company, the reputation of the company. Is it an existing company, or is it something that somebody got excited about a week ago and is kind of running crazy with, but doesn't really know what they're doing? Some of those kinds of things. And finally, I guess I would add, with the tobacco industry here in the county, a farmer can get a contract, and it will tell him that if he delivers a quality crop, he is guaranteed a certain price. And from what I've been hearing, that's not being offered in the hemp industry. And so a lot of the risk is falling on the farmer's shoulders as well as the investors.
So how can farmers make sure they get a good price?
Well, there are prices being thrown around, but a lot of them do depend on the market. And so right now the market for CBD oils are very strong. But it has primarily been a kind of a health food item. I was given a bottle of CBD oil that I've sampled, and looking at the price, it's around $50 to $70 a bottle, and there's only 1 ounce in there. And so if we extrapolate that to an acre basis, where you might get 1,000 pounds of buds and leaves, and of that, hopefully, 12 to 15% is CBD oil, and that's extracted. If you do the math, and after the purification, you could easily get, or at least if I'm doing this right, you could get close to 50,000 little bottles of CBD oil at $50 a pop. If you do the math there, you're talking about tens and tens of thousands of dollars potentially per acre. But there's already a dozen varieties that I've been able to find on the internet that are offered for sale, and they seem like reasonable, reputable companies. So unless we're coming up with a new use for this CBD oil other than the salves and the creams, I think some of that market is already being satisfied. Right. And so what a lot of these investors are going to have to do is maybe get more of the general public to buy into the concept of CBD oil, because I think it's primarily a health, kind of the health food people currently. And, that's going to take time. It's going to take money. It's going to take investment. And so my concern would be, not that these folks aren't well-intentioned, but that the market may not last, especially the high-priced market may not last as long as what they're thinking it will.
Right, like it's almost already saturated.
Right, yeah. So farmers, need to get what guarantees they can, and some of the buyers are offering to provide some of the seeds. Others, are offering to split costs and things. So it's a matter of who you're working with, what you can find out about them, what they can provide you with, and then how comfortable you feel with that.
So it seems that one of hemp's promises is the fiber industry. So from talking to a lot of people on this show, it seems like, the CBD market, sure, is at a high point now. It's going to come down, but then you'll start to see this fiber and, potentially the seed market come up. So that's more of a long-term vision.
Right. Well, and we hope so. And certainly, the hemp seeds are high in protein. They have an excellent amino acid profile. So as far as making a meal that might be comparable to soybean meal for animal feed, people are very interested in looking at that. And if there's any advantages to that, certainly with fiber as well, there are some excellent properties with the fiber. But when you think about both of those, in both of those cases, the fiber and the meal and the seeds is going to have to elbow itself into established markets.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Maybe the hemp meal is a higher quality, but the yields that we got at our research farm were nowhere near the yields that we get with soybeans. And so you look at the price of soybean meal versus hemp meal, and it's got to be a whole lot better because the yield was a good bit less. Now maybe that will improve, in the coming years. And you look at the fiber industry. We don't make a lot of stuff in this country. A lot of our fiber products, as far as clothing and stuff, are made in other countries where products, textiles, and things are available at a very low price. So again, you're looking at if it's for clothing and papers and cloth and stuff, you're looking at something that's got to be a very high quality, I think, product, some kind of a niche market, so that it can elbow its way into the market. When hemp was grown here in the 1800s, it didn't leave the area because it was made illegal. It wasn't made illegal until after the turn of the century. But there was this fellow named Eli Whitney who invented something called the cotton gin, and cotton became much cheaper and much easier to produce than hemp fiber. And so the hemp became less and less, and then it was...
Well, there were some labor costs involved there, right? Or no labor costs in terms of cotton. And I think that's why textiles are cheap coming in from other countries, is because, people don't get paid really hardly anything to make these things. So it's a labor issue as well.
I mean, if we can automate a lot of that, maybe that's where this hemp train comes in. I'm not sure at what stage that will produce fiber, if it's already, spun onto a spool where it would be ready to be used as a yarn or something.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're referring to the company out in York that just announced plans of installing the hemp train. It's a processing machine that does fiber and seed and CBD.
And that, and maybe those ways of using technology to overcome some of the competitors with this crop, and then as we learn about some of the advantages, maybe over existing textiles and fibers, then we can move forward and slowly increase our acreage. So I don't want to be a naysayer, but my primary position is to educate farmers and growers and to, help them grow a better crop.
Right.
So I don't try to get in too much into the financial analysis. We have marketers and things at Penn State that help do that. But just looking at the big picture, I just wanted to, remind farmers that they need to do their homework, that there are some risks, certainly some risks involved, and, they need to go slow. So that I would say, if you're going to go slow, maybe start with half an acre or an acre if you're growing it for CBD. If you're growing it for fiber or grain, where you can use modern machinery, there again, maybe 5 or 10 or 20 acres at the most. Don't commit 50% of your acreage to something that's just not proven yet.
All right, there you go. Jeff Graybill from Penn State Extension, offering some wise words of caution. Sort of like my mom used to say, if we were too excited about something, she'd say, cool your jets. So, cool your jets. So as I put these podcasts together, I'm talking to all kinds of different people, and I hear all sorts of different things about the hemp industry. And one of the things I've learned about is the Hemp Steering Committee here in Pennsylvania. Apparently this is a group of farmers and business leaders and experts from universities and whatnot. It's a group that's working with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture to, essentially steer the industry in the state. So I thought we would talk to one of the people on the steering committee, a guy named Bill Roberts from Perry County. Hi, Bill. Could you introduce yourself for us?
Yes. Well, my name is Bill Roberts, and I am a farmer, and we raise cattle in Perry County.
All right. Well, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, you're a cattle rancher from Perry County, but you're also a hemp farmer. Is that right?
I am a hemp farmer. Forgive me. Yes. We had one of the original licenses to grow hemp, and we were actually the first farm in Pennsylvania to harvest hemp legally when we harvested our 2017 crop.
And so the reason I asked you on the show today is because you're also involved in the steering committee, the hemp steering committee that's working with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Now, how did that steering committee come about, and where is the committee steering the state?
Well, I think it came about because a number of people saw this as an opportunity for a new industry that combined universities, farmers, and technology manufacturers. And we wanted to get those groups all together to try to start off this new hemp economy in Pennsylvania. And that's what we did.
Okay. So can you give us an idea of sort of what the vision is for the hemp industry in Pennsylvania, according to the steering committee?
We have an opportunity, one of the, for at least the first time in my lifetime and a number of other people's lifetime, to develop an agricultural opportunity that leads directly to manufacturing and products. And I think and certainly what I am interested in is to make certain that all people in that chain, and starting with the farmers, have equal opportunity to share in the benefits of the product.
So a question that I ask almost everybody on this podcast is, what can farmers be doing to avoid getting the short end of the stick when it comes to industrial hemp? And it sounds like you have that same concern.
There's no question I have that concern. I think that, historically, farmers have grown the crop, sold it to somebody who processed it, and then the processor sent somebody generally who manufactured something with it. And this is more myself than the whole committee, but I am hoping that we can put, for lack of a better word, co-ops together with the farmers and have them share in the process all the way through. Pennsylvania has a history of co-ops, and there are people here who have the expertise to manage them. And at least my initial blush, that's what I would hope. I would hope that we can work something out in the cooperative area with the farmers so that they have some, gravitas in this.
What sort of advice would you give to farmers now who are interested in growing hemp?
I would tell them to be careful. I mean, I think that there is a huge amount of opportunity in hemp, but there also is very, very little expertise of growing it in Pennsylvania. What we saw using the hemp from Canada, for instance, the one thing that was clear after a while was that when you get up north out of Canada and you're buying crop, they have a very long, summer's days. We don't have that here. So the genomes that worked up there don't work here. One of the other things that we are doing, is that we are working with Penn State to try to develop some Pennsylvania strains of hemp that grow well here. And so, because I'm skipping from where you asked, I think that they need to be careful. They need to know where they're getting their seed. I think for the most part, the farmers who do this are going to want to have somebody who would purchase their product, because a lot of what they produce is going to depend on what they can sell. And I think that they need to have that sold at this point. This is the very early parts of it. And, there are a lot of people that look at this like the gold rush in California. And to some way, I think it is. There are going to be people who make a lot of money in hemp, but there are going to be more people who lose a lot of money in hemp if they're not careful. But I don't think that should stop people. There are also very serious people in the hemp industry, and you need to hook up with one of those. And I would say also start small. I mean, hemp. Everybody said to us, in the beginning, hemp is a weed; it'll grow anywhere. That's not so. And you have to look at at, are you going to put anything on it? What are you going to use as a fertilizer? There are a lot of different ideas on that. I've probably talked to 20 people who successfully grow hemp, and they grew it in 20 different ways. So it's almost an art as opposed to a science at this point, and it's going to take, a number of years to get it to a science. Hemp, has a huge potential. It also has challenges. The farmers in the very beginning want to make sure that they're well covered when they grow this, and but also they should not shy from taking an opportunity to try it, I think, because in the next few years, it is going to be a real product, and I think the opportunity for farmers to make real money on it.
Okay, so that was Bill Roberts. He's a cattle rancher, hemp farmer. He's also the president of IBS Development Corporation. They do economic development throughout the state. So he's on the steering committee working with the Department of Ag, steering our hemp industry. So I'm going to share more of my interview with Bill next week, because you need to hear about the work he's doing up there in Perry County with feeding hemp and the hemp cake to livestock. He's got a beef farm up there, and according to him, there's some pretty amazing results. So look for that next week. Now, okay, so you've noticed today's show is a little different. I'm always trying to change things here and there. We've had many voices today. I'm going to add one more into the mix today. A few weeks ago, I took a drive out to West Hempfield Township, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where I caught up with Tom Culton, a hemp farmer, and we sat in his kitchen. And you will hear from this recording that it was a windy day and the shutters were outside banging on the house.
My name is Tom Culton. I am the proprietor and owner of Culton Biologique, which is an organic farm in Silver Spring in West Hempfield Township, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Excellent. And you are a hemp grower?
I am a hemp grower.
And how did you get into that?
Growing up in Hempfield, I always was interested in the crop that gave us our namesake. I was a history buff as a kid, so I was very interested in seeing why this crop wasn't allowed. I was always oppositionally defiant, so I wanted to grow something that we weren't allowed to grow. So I wanted to see if we were able to make a viable run at this in the future, because I knew that it was just a matter of time before we came to our senses.
So did you get a research permit?
Yes, I did get a research permit along with my partner.
Okay.
Last year.
In 2018?
Yeah, we got the $2,000 permit, and we grew 1 acre.
So, what did you not know going into growing hemp, and what did you learn? What
10 inches of rain in one day would do to a full standing crop. And I actually learned a lot in terms of spacing. We've been scaling up for this for the past 5 years. I've been growing organic tobacco here, and I had no interest in growing tobacco until the possibility of growing industrial hemp was presented to us. So before we knew this was coming, so before we wanted to enter into this, we wanted to see the viability of doing this on scale.
Okay. So how much tobacco did you grow?
My biggest was 11 acres.
Okay. And that's pretty labor intensive?
Yes, that's all handwork, which is how we'll be harvesting into the foreseeable future. I'll be harvesting hemp. Last year, we harvested the whole acre by hand, every single stalk.
How'd that go?
It was fun. If you have a good team and you enjoy the work, it's better than tobacco. I'll take that over tobacco any day.
So what's the harvesting like? You go out and you clip it and you lay it down?
We clipped it and put it in harvest bins right onto the wagon.
Okay.
And then loaded it, and then brought wagon loads into the barn that you just saw. And then we would have tarps, and we sort them by size, and then we clip the top canopy off, take all the top branches off and lay them aside. All that went straight to hanging in the barn.
Okay.
The bottoms we hung whole, and that stayed separate because we didn't know what application we would use for that yet. And then all the tops went and they were processed after they were dried. I dried and cured. I think they were there about 14 days, and then we processed.
Okay. So you were separating CBD stuff from fiber stuff?
Yeah. And there's still CBD in the lowers, but it was just so, I mean, they were pretty popcorn, so.
Right. Now, where did you get it processed?
We actually did our own processing.
Oh, okay. What's that like?
Trial and error.
It's like a chemistry set?
It was very 7th grade, but we really we didn't have the access to $100,000 or 100 plus for CO2, and we didn't know if we were going to do this again. We wanted to see the viability of, incorporating into the product that we were, that we initially were. We had this vision about 7 years ago when my business partner's company started, and we said if hemp is ever legal, we definitely want to do a CBD infused beverage.
Okay.
But something that is locally grown, because we're already growing the vegetables here for the juice. Why don't we incorporate cannabis into it as well?
Right. And how far along are you in that?
We produced the juice last year.
Oh, wow. So what is that? What's it called?
Rejuice.
Rejuice.
Yes.
Nice. And what came different flavors or?
We did a hemp and white currant last year.
Oh, neat.
So we cut immature plants and we processed them, and we also cut mature. So we were actively harvesting as we went. So we did some pretty green material.
Okay.
It was very novice and trial and error, like I said. But we learned a lot about flavor profiles.
How was the flavor profile?
Our initial returns were grassy and very cannabis forward.
So this year, you said you're growing?
I'm gonna grow 10 acres. That's with the math that I've done on how many plants that I'll be growing here. So that equates to 10 acres.
So how many plants is that?
9,500.
Wow. Okay. And then can you talk about the genetics of those plants? Is that?
Yeah, I can say where they're coming from. There's Swiss genetics and French genetics and Italian genetics via Oregon.
Okay. So I get the sense that a lot of hemp farmers are, protective about their genetic sources. Why do you think that is?
My personal reason for being protective is I'm a subscriber to the belief that terroir and place and atmosphere is a very big factor in growing cannabis.
Okay.
And for me to talk about genetics would be doing a disservice to other growers listening, because they might have the idea that in their climactic zone they can grow the same crop, and it's just not the case. So I'm reluctant to offer genetics, and also it's because the people I'm sourcing genetics from are still in the research stages of stabilizing these genetics.
Okay.
So a few of the strains we're growing don't even have names yet.
So the whole concept of terroir is borrowed from the wine industry, right?
Yes.
And it's like the flavor is based on the land itself,
It's the soil composition, it's the climate, It is the handling of the product, it's all the influences, it's even the way that you farm, the way you interact with the plant. We're biodynamic growers here, so it takes it to another level. All our inputs come from on the farm.
Okay.
So every fertilizer that we make is based here on the farm, whether we're using foliars that are made from herbal products here on the farm. We're also producing manure here with the goats for fertilizer, and we are growing we're going to be certified this year. We're in the process of having PCO certify our hemp crop.
Okay.
And that's something that should be the standard because we are ingesting this product.
Right. So you'll have organic, biodynamic, locally grown hemp.
Absolutely.
Now, you're here in Lancaster County, so you have some advantages soil-wise. Can you talk about the soil of this area?
Yes. Where we're sitting here, my soil is a Duffield silt loam, which is an optimal composition for growing a broad range of crops, anything from vegetables to field crops to, we're growing grain here as well. We make a killer polenta.
Nice.
I'll send you home with some. And we're also growing wheat, which has been traditionally a dual crop for us. It's a cover crop, but also we're taking the grain off for our own use. And the soil here, we're on a limestone ridge, and my family purchased this farm because of that. Coming from Germany, that was the optimal soil. That growing up where they grew up, that was the soil that they were akin to. So when they came to America, that's what they were looking for. They weren't necessarily looking for a taste of home, but the taste of home they were looking for was in the ground.
Right. Okay. So, how many generations have been farming this land here?
I'm the 7th generation here. We're 10th generation here in the county.
Okay.
1741, my family came here.
All right. So that's Tom Culton, who is possibly the first farmer to grow hemp in Hempfield in something like 80 years. So I plan to check back in with Tom over the growing season, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Special thanks today to Senator Judy Schwank, Penn State Extension educator Jeff Graybill, Hemp Steering Committee member Bill Roberts, biodynamic farmer Tom Culton, and of course my colleague at Lancaster Farming, Phil Gruber. And of course, if you have any questions or concerns about anything you heard on today's show, please send me an email. You can reach me at podcast@lancasterfarming.com. A couple of other things. I'm trying to collect stories about CBD success. So if you have a story about how CBD has affected your life, leave me a message at 717-721-4462. Don't forget about the fundraiser that we're trying to do for that old-timer in Maryland to buy a hemp ukulele for his friend in Florida. You can go to gofundme.com/hemp ukulele. And if you enjoyed today's show, I ask that you share it with one other person in your life, a friend, a coworker, a relative, somebody who you think will enjoy it. Okay, thank you for listening to today's show. My name is Eric Herlock, digital editor at Lancaster Farming. And until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper. The Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast, episode 26, is copyright 2019 Lancaster Farming. Lancaster Farming is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock. That's me. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tinbird Shadow.
Industrial hemp.
Thank you for listening.